She was a child taken from her home in West Africa. Her language was stolen, her family erased, her name was changed. By the time she arrives in colonial America, the world had already decided what she will be allowed to be. And yet, she does something history still doesn't quite know how to explain. She wrote. Not just words, poetry so refined, so intellectually sophisticated that it unsettled the colonialist. And that discomfort, that's where her story begins. Her name was Phillis Wheatley, an enslaved black girl in the 18th century. She became one of the most published poets in colonial America. But this is not just a story about talent. It's a story about power and about who history allows to speak and who must prove they are even capable of thought. If you've never heard of Phillis Wheatley, that silence isn't accidental. History has a habit of selecting the geniuses it wants us to celebrate. Phillis Wheatley's existence challenged the belief that enslaved Africans were intellectually inferior. So instead of honoring her, history questioned her, doubted her, tested her, and eventually quietly moved past her. Welcome to Sometimes and Forever, the space where we pull back the curtain on the stories you think you know and ask why some names are remembered while others are almost erased. I'm Denny Downing, and today we are reclaiming the story of a woman whose brilliance terrified an empire built on denial. If stories like this matter to you, stories about women, power, and historical truth, consider subscribing. In this episode, we're going to follow Phillis Wheatley from her arrival in the United States to the rooms where powerful white men demanded she prove she could think. And we're going to ask a question history never fully answered. What do you do when your very existence is treated as impossible? This is part 2 of a 5-part series on female writers who changed the world that I'm sharing with you. Are you ready to uncover the truth? The hidden legacies of another literary titan? Okay, let's jump right in. So, I'm going to ask you to do a little time travel with me. Let's travel back to the 1700s. This is when a young girl who would become the first African American woman to publish a book of poetry was stolen from West Africa. The year is 1761. A small ship named the Phillis cuts through the Atlantic waters. On board, among the hundreds trapped below deck, is a little girl. The fact that she was losing her milk teeth puts an intelligent guess at her age to be about 7 years old. We don't know her real name. We don't even know where she really came from, because some historians believe she was taken from what is now modern-day Senegal, while others say it's modern-day Gambia. We're not sure. But when she arrived in Boston, she was purchased by John Wheatley, a wealthy merchant who said he bought the slender, frail child for a trifle. She was meant to be a slave for his wife Susanna. They named her Phillis after the ship that carried her to Boston, and Wheatley after themselves. Within months of her arrival, the child began to do something extraordinary. The Wheatleys noticed that she absorbed language like breath. She learned English very quickly. Her mistress, fascinated by her ability, removed her from household duties and allowed her daughter Mary to become Phyllis's tutor. By the age of 12, she was reading Milton and the Bible. By the age of 14, she was reading Greek and Latin and had begun writing poetry. Let me pause here, because we're talking about an enslaved African girl in colonial America reading classics. Her genius was undeniable. Phillis began writing poems that stunned people, elegant verses about faith, morality, humanity. These were verses crafted by a young black girl society believed incapable of intellect. And of course, the colonialists couldn't handle it. They couldn't believe it, really. So instead of celebrating her brilliance, do you know what they did? They questioned it. A panel of 18 white men, including the governor, ministers, and some of the most powerful men in Boston at the time summoned her to prove she wrote her own poems. Imagine that. Imagine creating beauty only to be interrogated about it. But I think Phillis knew what she was up against, and she knew that her works belonged to her. So she was able to walk into that room in a calm and unbothered way. She answered every question. When she was given texts in Latin, she translated them effortlessly and was able to discuss theology with these grown men. When it was over, the men signed a document, an official statement called an attestation, declaring that the poems were genuinely written by her. That document was later printed in the front of her book, verifying her authorship. Imagine that. One of the most talented writers in the colonies had to stand trial for her intelligence. There's something about that moment in Phillis Wheatley's life that really makes me stop and think, because she had a few things working against her here. The first was her age. At this time, she was about 19 years old. That's still pretty young. The second thing that was working against her was her race. Yes, being black means that the powers that be at the time didn't think she had the sufficient mental capacity to understand Greek, Latin, or the classics, and worse yet, to be able to write eloquent poetry. The biggest thing, though, that I think Phillis had against her at this time was that she was a woman. I just have this theory, I have a thinking that perhaps, if she were a black man, her intellect wouldn't have been questioned so harshly. It probably still would have been questioned, but not so harshly. But being a woman, being a black woman, made it harder for her. Her brilliance wasn't elevated through her work alone. It had to be verified through interrogation, and even then, America still said no. The attestation, it didn't smooth the way for Phillis to become an acknowledged writer. American publishers still wouldn't publish her work. After this ordeal, her mistress Susanna arranged for her to travel to England in 1773. In England, her poetry was received more seriously, and under the Countess of Huntingdon's patronage, Phillis's book finally found a publisher. This wasn't charity. Do not misunderstand it. It wasn't charity. It was sponsorship. The kind that told British Literary Society that this voice is worth listening to. Phillis was welcomed into elite circles. She was invited into drawing rooms where her poetry was read aloud. She was discussed and admired. For the first time in her life, she was treated not as property, but as the intellect that she was. But then something extraordinary happened. A meeting with King George III was scheduled. Now let that just sink in for a minute. Let's just think about that really seriously for a minute. This is a woman. She was kidnapped as a child from Africa. She was enslaved in Boston. And she was now being invited to meet the King of England. And how did she get here? Because of her writing. The meeting was planned. The court was aware of her. Her reputation had reached the highest level in British society. It was even reported, and this is just a report, probably just a rumor, that the king liked her poems. But you know, fate has a way of intervening in real life and just kind of throwing things awry and making things just fall apart. Because the meeting never happened. It didn't happen. Unfortunately, Phillis had to leave England before the meeting could actually take place. Her mistress Susanna had fallen seriously ill, and Phillis had to return to America to care for her. And just like that, the glorious moment was snatched away from Phillis. But it must be remembered that for just that brief period, Phillis Wheatley came within arm's reach of royal recognition. But sadly, it slipped away. Still, the journey had already changed everything for her. Her book, Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral, was published in London, making her the first African-American woman to publish a book. She returned to America with proof in her hands. proof that her words were worthy, proof that her mind could not be dismissed. And yet, despite international recognition, despite aristocratic patronage, America would never fully give her what England briefly did: safety, stability, and respect. When I think about this period in Phillis's life, I feel like sometimes history opens a door just long enough for a woman to step through and then slams it shut again. It just gives her like a really brief taste of success and then just snatching it away. So Phillis returned to America and to her life of slavery. Though Phillis disapproved of slavery, she expressed gratitude that it was slavery that brought her from her pagan existence and to God. We have to remember what the times were like. People were very religious back then, and so her coming from Africa, coming from a world where they were thought to be pagans and coming to Christianity, she was grateful that she found the truth. And so she wrote, "'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught by a benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption never sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolical dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes black as Cain may be refined and join the angelic train." Wow. Shortly after her book was published, the Wheatleys emancipated her. She was finally free. Her former mistress, Susanna, died in 1774, and 4 years later, so did her former master, John Wheatley. Now this brings me to the part of her story that breaks my heart the most. After gaining freedom, Phillis entered a world that did not know how to support a black woman's genius. So she was in the world all alone, and she needed support. But there was no real support for her. She married a free black man named John Peters, who was a self-styled lawyer. At first, things looked hopeful, but reality hit them really hard. They reportedly had 3 children, none of which survived infancy. They faced poverty, constant racism, harsh living conditions, and worst of all, even though Phillis continued to write, publishers refused to support her second book. This wasn't because her writing declined somehow. It was mostly because America was shifting. Things were changing at this time because the Revolutionary War had changed the country's priorities. And so a brilliant black woman, a brilliant black poet, was no longer a talking point. She was not much of a novelty right now because the country had to be thinking about its relationship with England now. So poor Phillis ended up working as a domestic servant. She was now doing physical labor to which she was unaccustomed. The hands that wrote exquisite verses were now scrubbing floors. In 1784, at just 31 years old, Phillis Wheatley died in poverty. Her newborn baby died with her. She's buried in an unmarked grave. At the time of her death, Phillis had 143 unpublished poems. Just like Lady Murasaki that I spoke about in my previous video in this series, Phillis was buried with no marker, no ceremony, no recognition. Even though she died, her poetry continued to circulate. Her impact lived in the abolitionist movement. Her work influenced black writers, activists, and educators. Her voice became proof that black intellect existed, proof that enslaved people possessed profound creativity and humanity. Her life and work is a spark that lit the long-burning flame of African American literature. Phillis Wheatley didn't live long, but what she accomplished stretched far beyond her lifetime. She was a poet, a pioneer, a prodigy, and a survivor. Her life reminds us that even in the bleakest conditions, brilliance can break through and forever change the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with someone that you think may enjoy it too. Leave me a comment below and tell someone about Phillis Wheatley. Have a conversation about her. Let her name live loudly in our time. This has been Sometimes and Forever. I'll see you next time. when we will discuss another woman who shaped our literary world. Thank you.